to wait patiently for a whole month for the revelation to come down to him. There is wisdom behind God making the Muslims wait for the revelation. It exposed the hypocrites who, until then, were pretending to be believers and living amongst the Muslims. These are the verses that announced his wife's innocence. When you heard the lie, why did believing men and women not think well of their own people and declare, "This is obviously a lie," and why did the accusers not bring 4 witnesses to it? If they cannot produce such witnesses, they are the liars in God's eyes. This shows that what was revealed of the Quran was not based on his own desires, but rather it was revelation from God. The Quran clearly warns Muhammad against tampering with the Quran if the Prophet had attributed some fabrication to us. We would certainly have seized his right hand and cut off his lifeblood and none of you could have defended him. The Quran cannot be imitated. Perhaps the greatest miracle of the Quran is that it cannot be imitated. The author of the Quran tells us that it is impossible for anyone to produce just one chapter like it. Even if we were to all help one another in the effort, say even if all mankind and jinn spirits came together to produce something like this Quran, they could not produce anything like it. However much they helped each other. The Arabs at the time considered themselves, and are still considered by historians and linguists to this day, to be masters of the Arabic language. The failure of those at the peak of their trade, mastery of the Arabic language, to rival the Quran, which challenged them, should make one think about its origins. He can break down who could have possibly offered the Quran into groups of people to better analyze its origins. Let's explore each of these options. Prophet Muhammad, another Arab, or a non-Arab. Prophet Muhammad. In addition to the earlier points in this chapter that we covered, which show he could not have been the author to this, we can add that he could not read or write. The Quran itself confirms this. Follow the messenger, the unlettered prophet, they find described in the Torah that is with them, and in the Gospel. Moreover, he was not a poet, nor was he considered a master of the language. He did not engage in the craft of poetry. Therefore, to claim that he somehow managed to create a literary and linguistic masterpiece is irrational. Navid Kermani, an expert in Islamic studies, writes, he had not studied the difficult craft of poetry. When he started reciting verses of the Quran publicly, yet Muhammad's recitations differed from poetry, and from the rhyming prose of the soothsayers, the other conventional form of inspired metrical speech at the time. The scholar Taqi Usmani similarly argues such a proclamation was no ordinary thing. It came from a person who had never learned anything from the renowned poets and scholars of the time, had never recited even a single piece of poetry in their poetic congregations, had never attended the company of soothsayers, and far from composing any poetry himself, he did not even remember the verses of other poets. We know from history that at a personal level Prophet Muhammad disliked poetry, and there are instances where he attempted to relate some poetry and would jumble the words up. Aisha was asked, did the Prophet, may the peace and blessings of God be upon him, used to relate anything from poetry? She said it was most detestable thing to him, except that at times he used to relate a verse from the person of Banu Qais and he jumbled it up. Abu Bakr told him it was not like that. So the Prophet of God said, by God, I am not a poet, and neither is it appropriate for me.